More drama from the House.
And when I stand, you take your seat. If you continue to do that, you will be removed from this House immediately.
All I knew was in papers they filed on page 222, it said I would be killed, or could be killed. That's what I know, and no one seemed to be concerned with that.
I made a decision to resign as chairman of the Free National Movement and from the Senate.
If you did nothing wrong, why did you resign?
Tonight we're in Martinique. I'm Chris Saunders. We've got complete coverage from the Caribbean Swimming Championships.
The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now. Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
My resignation is not an admission of any guilt or any wrongdoing.
Free National Movement Chairman Senator Michael Pintard resigned his post as party chairman today and has sent a letter to the Senate advising the same. Welcome to the start of another week of news, and good evening, Bahamas. I'm Altaviz Munnings.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley. Topping the news tonight, these developments come as investigations are underway into an alleged scheme by a major environmental organization in which some shocking allegations have been made.
We can tell you from our Clint Watson that Pintard says his resignation is no admission of guilt, and he explains why he took the steps that he took. Clint is joining us live in studio. Good evening, Clint.
Good evening, Altaviz, and good evening, Keisha. We can tell you tonight that having resigned from the Free National Movement as chairman and the Senate as an opposition senator, Michael Pintard sought to set the record straight on an ongoing saga that had his name at the center.
At no time did me in my capacity as a professional working with calendars and co, or as chairman of the Free National Movement, engage in any unethical or illegal activities in order to fabricate or get anyone else to fabricate information about Mr. Nygaard, about any member of the government, or any citizen for that matter.
Pintard says he was retained by calendars during the time of the alleged incident and was a strong supporter of Save the Bay's environmental group. He says the meeting, in which there are tape recordings of him, was organized through a colleague of his who was contacted by certain individuals who wanted to reveal the players behind the alleged hate rally and defamatory material being posted at the time online.
I was invited to such a meeting, and during the course of getting the facts, the evidence related to those things, they went further to indicate past acts that they had carried out and future acts that they claimed to have been contracted to carry out. And I sought to then introduce to colleagues and friends the evidence that they had provided, and to set up additional meetings so that they can speak directly to investigators.
Now, as to why he didn't go directly to the police after learning of the serious plot and knowing about alleged death threats, well,
I did not then and do not see now that it is my obligation to immediately leave such a meeting and go and report it to the Royal Bahamas Police Force. My obligation and the reasonable and sensible thing to do is to tell the friends and clients, here is what is being claimed, so that they can determine, one, do they want to go immediately and report it to the police? Two, do they want to take security measures in the event that word gets back to the culprits, those that came with the message, or anyone else, so that they could make any security preparations that they need? And thirdly, and most importantly, persons ought to further investigate to determine whether or not such claims are credible.
But we haven't heard the end from Pintard. He says over the course of the next few days and weeks, he will be spending a great deal of time to, quote, set the record straight.
So release, if there's no fear, I certainly have none, release the entire audio clip and not the cut and paste versions that seek to tell a story that I was not a part of. At no point did I fabricate or seek to get anyone to fabricate information. Secondly, the affidavit that is circulating online, a coached document, is inaccurate, and we will lay lie to that during the course of this week.
Now, Pintard suggests that the original undoctored affidavit will reveal the players, and although in his view filled with lies, will implicate a senior member of government as initially indicated. And Keisha, to answer your question as to why the resignation now, well, he says it's simply to remove the distraction from the Free National Movement as they continue their pursuit in perhaps becoming the next government. Live in the studio, I'm Clint Watson. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Clint. Former Free National Movement Chairman and Senator Michael Pintard has the full backing of his party following his decision to resign from those posts on Monday. Party leader Dr. Hubert Minnis says despite Pintard's voluntary resignation, he maintains it's not an admission of guilt on his part, but sees it as a demonstration of political maturity. Dr. Minnis invited Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, whose name has also been linked to the controversy, to follow Pintard's lead.
The Free National Movement supports Michael Pintard's decision to defend himself against the political attacks being leveled against him. As Mr. Pintard has done the proper thing in tendering his resignation, we likewise call for the Deputy Prime Minister to tender his resignation based on the affidavits that raise questions about his participation in the same matter involving Mr. Pintard.
Now, despite previously calling for Pintard's resignation, Progressive Liberal Party Chairman Bradley Roberts says the party takes no joy in this latest development in the Nygaard Save the Bays saga. He also dismissed Minnis's call for Mr. Davis's resignation, stating that both Nygaard and Louis Bacon have said neither he or Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie were involved. While Pintard says he is guilty of no wrongdoing, Mr. Roberts says the public is intelligent enough to draw its own conclusions and questioned why the FNM chairman would resign if he did nothing wrong. Mr. Roberts says he lays the blame of Pintard's political demise squarely at the feet of Dr. Minnis.
He has a duty to properly mentor, steer, direct, and advise young politicians in his caucus and under his charge as to the honor and integrity required in public office. Once again, Dr. Minnis' leadership was weighted in the balance and found woefully wanting. Rather than be the solid and exemplary leader of his colleagues, Dr. Minnis failed miserably in the dispatch of his duty, and as a result, Mr. Pintard has become a casualty of an avoidable situation.
Queries over the credibility of the Save the Bays organization have prompted the resignation of one of its members and emotional responses from others. Public Relations Executive Diane Phillips has resigned as a director of the organization. She cited, quote, professional reasons not related to politics of any sort for her decision. She further explained that in her business of public relations, it's critical to have respect for and be respected by decision makers. Their work, she went on to say, impacts life, and especially so in a highly centralized governmental system, as is the Bahamas. Mrs. Phillips says the 30 years she hasn't been tied to political parties. She says she'll continue to represent Save the Bays and support its awareness campaigns. Meantime, another member of the Save the Bays organization, Joe Darville, says he's loath to have to defend his character, though he finds it necessary to do so now. He said he's done nothing to cast any disgrace upon the country and has nothing to hide, but suggested that his private calls and emails are being hacked into. Another Save the Bays member, Reverend C.B. Moss, chose not to comment at this time on the matter, but told ZNS News that he plans to file a writ of his own in court. The Nygaard controversy dominated the parliamentary debate again today, with the Prime Minister again finding himself in defense mode. Whether or not favors were extended to international fashion designer Peter Nygaard spurred some heated arguments and more debate over what documents linked to an alleged murder-for-hire scheme should be admissible. Here's Janina Ferguson from the House of Assembly.
I am standing. I am standing. I am standing. Take your seat. 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 Remove. Listen. I can tell you right now. Remember, take your seat. Take your seat or you will be removed. Take your seat. Take your seat.
Tempers reached the boiling point on Monday as the contentious debate in the House of Assembly continued. The heated back and forth brought Deputy Speaker Dion Smith to his feet. Fort Charlotte MP Dr. Andre Rollins had repeatedly interrupted the morning session with points of order, and after making certain comments regarding the NIGARD controversy, the Speaker and other House members had had enough.
The fact that they are quiet on one Peter NIGARD is very damning.
Every moment he wants to speak, this verbal masturbation, I don't get it, Mr. Speaker. We have to get the member to understand this is a serious place. Making charges, making allegations, Mr. Speaker, about people must stop.
Now, all of this took place as the Montague MP attempted to get through his contribution to the mid-year budget. Prime Minister Perry Christie again forced to defend his reputation, clarifying allegations that he misled the House over applications put forth by Peter NIGARD.
And when we moved on stem cells, you have to make an application in accordance with the laws. No application prior to that would be considered and be construed to be an application for stem cells. Mr. Speaker, no, you don't make applications if it doesn't exist. The application that was made and approval given in principle by the Leader of the Opposition as the Minister of Health, we vitiated. That's not a red herring. We vitiated and moved legislation.
Then there were the proposed land permits.
One was for NIGARD to rebuild his house and get a seabed lease that has been there for 30 years, part of it over water. And the other one to do with beach reclamation that they were alleging was put there by dredging and or accretion or both. The Prime Minister of the Bahamas commissioned an environmental impact study to determine the truth of the allegations, because the Prime Minister even said this is going to end up in court. An injunction has stopped the process, everything, even public consultations on the application. We were just cut off at the pass by Save the Base, who wanted to stop the process.
As much has come out of the NIGARD-Bacon saga, with allegations of murder plots and criminal schemes, including an alleged threat on the Prime Minister's life.
All I knew was in papers they filed on page 222, it said I would be killed, or could be killed. That's what I know. And no one seems to be concerned about that. At every turn, I have endeavored to do the best I can and never to compromise on the integrity of the office of Prime Minister.
Now, the Prime Minister assured that his government has acted properly and the findings of a police investigation will bear this all out. Now, debate on the mid-year budget continues. Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Fox Hill MP and Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell is calling for a committee of privilege over comments made by Fort Charlotte MP Dr. Andre Rollins after it was suggested that Rollins knew the whereabouts of the two Cuban nationals deemed a national security risk. It's also been suggested the two, who were recently released from custody by the courts, now work in the U.S. and were last spotted by local authorities in Bimini. The Foreign Affairs Minister concluded that his character was impugned in this matter and questioned how the Fort Charlotte MP would know of their whereabouts.
From open source documents where it was reported by the Tribune and not refuted by the government that these individuals were, in fact, legally residing and working in the state of Florida. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, who responds to everything that is printed in the paper that affects him or his ministry, said nothing to refute it.
The question is, where does he get his information? Secondly, when I made the presentation, the first presentation I made on this point, one of the points I raised was that the person who was the attorney in this matter should have been on inquiry. Should have been on inquiry. I didn't go as far as to say that he was on inquiry or that he knew. And certainly the circumstances of it are such that one would question whether or not he did in fact know or closed his eyes to the obvious risk of not knowing that these individuals, once they were out of prison, facilitated by him, would find their way smuggled into Florida.
Responding to this issue today was Prime Minister Christie. He indicated that the Bahamas remains in a difficult situation as it relates to the Florida wet foot, dry foot policy, as it's contradictory to the present legislation. He recently met with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and U.S. Chargé d'Affaires Lisa Johnson on the issue.
Where a small country like the Bahamas is faced with having to accommodate itself to Cubans who want to get into the United States of America. And we are told they are unacceptable. And possibly they are accommodated through a policy once you get to their shores, there's nothing they could do about it. Well, that places my country, or the country that I lead, into a very difficult position. And it's not a jokey position, it's a serious position. Because you, on the one hand, cannot impress upon me, as the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, people are a national security threat because you yourself would not bring them back into the United States of America. And then you face me in a situation where I have to stand in a counter parliament